Kenya's Generation Z has risen, not with whispers, but with a thunderous demand for change. Across city streets and distant villages, their voices boom with frustration and clarity. They're calling for something bolder, something real, leadership that reflects integrity, courage, and sovereignty. In their eyes, that leader isn't found in State House Nairobi, but in the rising figure of Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. His portrait now appears on matatus, Kenya's vibrant public minibuses, turning everyday transport into mobile declarations of defiance. For many young Kenyans, Traoré has become the symbol of everything their current leadership is not: accountable, humble, and unshackled from foreign influence. Disillusioned with President William Ruto's governance, they are rejecting what they see as broken promises, systemic exploitation, and policies that favor international lenders over the everyday Kenyan. Their rallying cry: leadership that reflects African pride and protects African dignity. Values they believe Traoré embodies. But what makes a Burkinabè military leader who rose to power in 2020 through a coup the unexpected face of hope in Kenya? And why is this resonating so deeply with youth fed up with the status quo? In September 2022, William Ruto assumed office as Kenya's fifth president, promising to uplift the common man, the so-called hustler nation. His campaign centered on economic revival and grassroots empowerment, and for a time, many believed in his vision. Just weeks later, in Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré led a military takeover, ousting the interim president amid widespread dissatisfaction. While both men came into power around the same time, their leadership paths could not have been more different. Kenya has witnessed growing unrest, a struggling economy, and mounting debt, while Burkina Faso, despite facing immense challenges, has seen sweeping reforms and a resurgence of national pride under Traoré. In Kenya, unpopular tax reforms introduced in 2024 sparked mass protests, particularly among the youth. What began as opposition to economic mismanagement quickly evolved into a full-blown movement, rejecting the legitimacy of the government. Slogans like "Occupy," "We want Traoré," and "Ruto must go" began appearing alongside Traoré's image on matatus, murals, and social media. At the same time, in Burkina Faso, Traoré tackled the country's security crisis with swift military restructuring and expelled foreign forces believed to undermine national interest. He diverted resources to rebuild the armed forces and reclaim territory once lost to insurgent groups. His policies were driven by a vision of sovereignty, both political and economic. Traoré acute refused the trappings of presidential luxury, retaining his military salary and publicly rejecting personal enrichment. This struck a powerful contrast with Ruto's administration, which has been criticized for corruption, questionable contracts, and perceived loyalty to Western donors. Traoré's transparency, humility, and tough stance on corruption have inspired admiration not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. In Nairobi's informal settlements and working-class neighborhoods, many young Kenyans now see him as a mirror of their own dreams, someone who walks the talk. Under Traoré, Burkina Faso has nationalized key industries like gold mining, ending exploitative contracts, and building the country's first gold refinery. This move not only boosted national revenue, but signaled a refusal to allow foreign companies to dictate the country's economic future. At the same time, he has directed those funds into public development, expanding health care, opening schools, and improving infrastructure. Farmers have been equipped with tools and training. Clinics now reach the remotest communities. Maternal mortality is down, food imports are reduced, and job creation is on the rise. These achievements contrast sharply with Kenya's growing economic despair. With rising national debt and massive public borrowing, much of the country's income goes toward loan repayments. Meanwhile, policies perceived as favoring external investors have left local farmers and small businesses struggling to survive. Ruto's government has been accused of leasing arable land to foreign corporations, while Kenya continues to import basic commodities, a reality that angers many in a nation known for its agricultural potential. The health sector tells a similar story. In Burkina Faso, under Traoré's leadership, 10 new hospitals have been built, mobile clinics have been deployed, and healthcare costs have significantly dropped. In contrast, Kenya's public health system remains overburdened and under-resourced, with many citizens unable to access quality care. Perhaps most striking is Traoré's war on corruption. His administration slashed ministerial wages, increased civil service pay, and launched audits that recovered millions in stolen funds. These recoveries were reinvested into education, healthcare, and infrastructure. In Kenya, however, the headlines are dominated by corruption scandals and allegations of misappropriated funds. Critics say that while young people are being told to tighten their belts, the elite are feasting off public coffers. In the face of growing public anger, Kenyan security forces have been accused of responding to protests with excessive force. Reports of injuries, abductions, and even deaths have shaken the nation. By mid-2024, protests had escalated into weekly demonstrations. Young people, some still in school, have braved tear gas, rubber bullets, and live ammunition to make their voices heard. Civil rights organizations have documented hundreds of casualties. The movement is no longer just about tax, it's about dignity, justice, and accountability. While the Kenyan government attempts to quell dissent, Traoré's influence continues to grow. His image now represents more than just a military leader. It represents the possibility of a new kind of governance, one that is authentic, fearless, and unafraid to challenge foreign control. Across Africa, from Ghana to Liberia to the streets of Nairobi, his name is spoken with admiration. In April 2025, thousands rallied in Burkina Faso's capital to support him after reports of a failed coup attempt. Even accusations from powerful foreign figures, like US generals or European diplomats, haven't slowed his momentum. To his supporters, these attacks only prove that he is challenging the systems they wish to dismantle. In essence, the comparison between Kenya's struggling democracy and Burkina Faso's radical reformation is not about glorifying military rule. It is about evaluating results. Young Africans are no longer satisfied with speeches. They want action. They want leaders who live as they preach, who serve the people, and who are not afraid to reclaim sovereignty. Kenya's Generation Z is not calling for a coup. They're calling for accountability. They see in Traoré a symbol, not a savior. A symbol of the leadership they crave, bold, honest, and unafraid to break the mold. The images of Traoré on matatus are not just decorations, they are declarations. Declarations that Kenya's youth are awake, aware, and ready to reshape the future, with or without the blessings of the powerful. The response to the mounting pressure on Western influence in Africa was instant and intense. Across Burkina Faso, citizens filled the streets, waving their national flags alongside Russian ones, chanting slogans that denounced neocolonialism and foreign intervention. Protesters made it clear they were not just backing a man, but defending a vision of African independence. Similar waves of solidarity emerged in Accra, Monrovia, and other capitals where youth hailed Captain Ibrahim Traoré as a bold figure of continental renewal. In London, young members of the African diaspora organized marches echoing support, with chants naming him the heir to the late Thomas Sankara. Even in Jamaica, his influence rippled through music as a reggae anthem celebrating his defiance went viral, drawing attention to his anti-imperialist message online. Traoré has become a symbol of resistance. AI-generated art and edited videos depict him as a warrior challenging historical injustice and colonial legacies. While some of the media content may be exaggerated or digitally altered, the sentiment behind it is grounded in real admiration. Social media hashtags like #AfricaRising, #SankaraLives, and #TRAORE for Africa trend weekly, flooding platforms with messages of praise for his leadership. A widely shared clip of him visiting a newly built hospital in Ouagadougou reached millions, with users commenting, "This is what leadership looks like." From Nairobi to Johannesburg, youth have embraced his image, not just as a man, but as a movement. In Nigeria, 2 young activists were arrested after organizing a rally in his support, proving how disruptive and far-reaching his influence has become. In South Africa, students at the University of Cape Town even declared a Traoré Day in 2025, screening documentaries and holding debates on Pan-Africanism and leadership accountability. His name now resonates as a rallying cry for change, a stark contrast to what many see as the failed leadership elsewhere on the continent. That in Kenya, the discontent has reached boiling point. What began as protests against a controversial tax bill has grown into a full-blown national movement. Weekly demonstrations continue to fill the streets, with youth demanding systemic change and President Ruto's resignation. The burning of government buildings in major cities like Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu in mid-2024 symbolized the breaking point. Ruto's pledges for dialogue and unity have failed to resonate, especially among a generation that sees contradictions in his words and actions. While he speaks of Pan-African solidarity, his administration continues to engage heavily with institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. His overt support for Ukraine, his interactions with European leaders, and his perceived inaction on domestic corruption have led many to label him out of touch. A speech he gave at a continental summit in Johannesburg in 2020 earned applause for its rhetoric, but the credibility crumbled when, weeks later, he returned to negotiating a major international loan. These contradictions have not gone unnoticed. In contrast, Captain Traoré's approach has been grounded in results. He has nationalized resources, invested directly in agriculture, and redirected national wealth toward rebuilding public institutions. While Kenya's government continues to face scrutiny over scandals and mismanagement, Burkina Faso under Traoré has expanded food production, built hospitals, and strengthened security. The gap between rhetoric and reality in Kenya is now a public wound. A protest banner seen in Nairobi in 2025 captured this contrast with chilling clarity. Traoré fights for freedom, Ruto fights for loans. It's not just a slogan, it's a declaration of what many Kenyans feel: a yearning for leadership that serves the people, not external interests. If Ruto hopes to recover the trust of his people, his approach must shift drastically. First, Kenya must step away from the dependence on international lenders and instead prioritize local development, like Traoré did with Burkina Faso's agriculture. Kenya can invest in its own farmers, providing equipment, training, and support. A national push for food self-sufficiency could create thousands of jobs, boost the economy, and stabilize prices for everyday citizens. Second, addressing corruption must become more than just a promise. Traoré's aggressive action against smuggling and financial misconduct led to the recovery of millions, which he reinvested into schools, healthcare, and infrastructure. Kenya could follow a similar path by forming independent anti-corruption bodies, auditing government departments, and publicly sharing recovered assets. Transparency breeds trust, something Ruto's administration is rapidly losing. Third, the voices of Kenya's youth must be heard, not suppressed. Traoré has empowered young people through agricultural training, small business support, and inclusion in national development. Kenya could establish youth advisory councils, launch national skills programs, and create opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship. Gen Z's energy should be harnessed for progress, not silenced with tear gas and arrests. Finally, if Kenya truly believes in Pan-African ideals, it must demonstrate that belief through action, not optics. Traoré's moves to reduce dependency on France and strengthen ties with regional allies show a commitment to sovereignty. Kenya can lead by example, supporting African-led solutions, strengthening intra-African trade, and investing in industries that serve local needs. A symbolic act such as reclaiming control over a key national resource could signal a realignment of priorities. The rise of Traoré as a beloved figure among Kenya's youth is not just about one man, it's about what he represents. In Burkina Faso, he has turned hardship into resilience, reclaiming land, restoring pride, and delivering tangible results. Under his leadership, terrorism has been pushed back, farming has expanded, and access to healthcare has improved dramatically. The stories of ordinary Burkinabè citizens, like farmers feeding their communities or mothers receiving safe medical care, stand as proof of what is possible when leadership is rooted in service. In contrast, Kenya's leadership is facing growing rejection. The ongoing protests, driven by youth anger over economic strain, corruption, and police brutality, reflect a nation at a crossroads. The matatus painted with Traoré's face are more than art, they're a declaration of desire for a new kind of governance. They reflect a generation no longer willing to accept broken promises and superficial reforms. From Nairobi's bustling avenues to Burkina Faso's rural farmlands, from Accra's classrooms to the streets of London, the message is the same. Africa's youth are ready for real change. They are demanding leaders who fight for them not just in speeches, but in action. As Captain Ibrahim Traoré's popularity climbs, President Ruto's approval continues to fall. The question now is not whether the tide is turning, it already has. The only question that remains is whether Ruto will adjust course and lead with courage, or whether he'll be left behind by a generation that refuses to settle for less.